Is Trails Through Daybreak worth it? I'm going to be answering that question from the perspective of a new player because this is my first entry in the Legends of Hero franchise. No biases, no sugarcoating, just my authentic opinion. Full transparency, I was provided an early access copy, so thank you NIS America and Falcom, but I'm not restricted in any way, shape, or form on what I can say, but I will be avoiding spoilers. We're gonna start with my perspective as a new player to the franchise, but later I'm gonna get into my pros and cons of Trails Through Daybreak. Let's start with the question, was this a good entry point? For me, Trails Through Daybreak was the perfect entry point based on why I never gave the other games a try. I flirted with the option several times. I watched every single video on YouTube imaginable to try and convince myself to play these games, but I was always steered away from the graphics and the pacing issues that's described in the videos that I did watch. I was told that you had to play through all of Trails of Cold Steel, 1, and then towards the end is where the actual arc starts to get good. And for me personally, I just wasn't willing to invest 60 hours into a game for it to start getting good at the end. Now, Trails Through Daybreak addresses both of those issues and is the beginning of an all-new story arc, which is why I decided to jump in here. They also moved the game to a new engine, which improved the graphics, nothing crazy, like it's obviously not Final Fantasy level or Tales of Arise, but it improved it just enough to get me over that hurdle and actually give the game a chance. The pacing of the story also has been on point so far, drawing me in to figure out what happens next as early as chapter 1. I set aside about 10 hours to play this game before I started working to script my review, and I accidentally crossed the 20-hour mark because the story just kept me so invested. And so, you got me, I'm definitely gonna be playing this one through, and I feel like if you're on the fence about jumping into the Trails series, I recommend grabbing the demo where you can play through all of chapter 1 on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which is about 10 hours of content. That should be all it takes to have you sold on the game, or at least figure out if you like it or not, especially with the way that the narrative progresses. And if you're not sold on it by then the franchise just may not be for you. The Trails Through Daybreak story follows Van as he's working as a Speargan. I have no idea where this word comes from, but think of it as a mixture between a detective and a bounty hunter that does odd jobs for all types of clients around the Calvard Republic. Vaughn is hired by our second protagonist, Agnes, to help find a specific orbment called the Octogenesis, which was created by her late great-grandfather, Clyde Epstein, and he's known as one of the greatest scientists in history when it comes to the lore. Very early on, we find out that these Octogenesis have all sorts of odd powers. In Claude Epstein's notes, he warns Agnes that she needs to collect all of these Octogenesis before a certain date. That's what kickstarts the journey between Vaughn and Agnes, who are joined by several new characters who join your party along the way. When it came to the story as a new player, there was a little bit of a learning curve to catch up with all of the terms and organizations that were constantly being brought up, but Falcom did a great job with this key explaining several things that definitely came in handy. I read through the majority of the terms here at the start of the game, as well as some of the organizations, and then as I started progressing through the story, I began to fully pick them up since I constantly kept seeing them being brought up again. All the different organizations being brought up though, created a ton of curiosity for me because now I wanted to explore them even more and learn the backstory behind each organization's lore. There were just so many badass characters being introduced, and it's like, oh, they're part of this organization, these few people are here, but the bigger organization is named this. And so it's like, what do they do? Where are they from? Who are all the other members? Who's the head of it? Like, it just created like this curiosity loop that made me want to keep progressing in the game to learn more. Now, this could end up being a blessing or a curse because I'm still unsure if all of these different organizations are explored in Trails Through Daybreak, or if these are just interconnected plot points to reward fans who have played like the previous games. But that brings up another potential pain point for me as a new player, because there are a lot of characters that were making cameos, and so when I saw them, I'm like, is this foreshadowing that they're gonna show up again in the future? Or is this meant to be like an aha moment, you know, for those long-term fans that are like, oh, I recognize that person. And so that's something I'll, I guess, figure out as I continue progressing through the game and beat it to see if these characters pop up again. Regardless though, as I mentioned earlier, I'm thoroughly impressed by the story so far, and it's been hard for me to put the game down because I want to keep exploring the Calvard Republic more so that way I can get to that next story beat. If you like reviews like this where I go over every single nook and cranny, Make sure that you like the video so that way I know to continue doing it in this format, and consider subscribing for more JRPG content like this. But let's get back into the video. Combat in Trails Through Daybreak is divided into two modes. You have your action-based and your turn-based combat. Boss battles are exclusively fought in turn-based combat, but aside from that, you're able to seamlessly swap between the two different combat styles at will. So you can enter a battle, fight in turn-based combat, and then you can exit and continue fighting that battle with action-based. Now, with the action-based combat, it's pretty straightforward. You have square, which is going to be your attacking ability, and then you have your dodge. You can swap between the different characters in the open field, and different characters will have buffs against different types of enemies, but all characters will still have that same core square attack, dodge, or engage into a turn-based battle. And when you're in the open field, you're also actually able to do a charged attack, which is going to be providing a lot of stun. And if you stun your enemies and then enter turn-based combat, you're going to start by dishing out damage to them, and as well as they'll be stunned so you can continue to attack and start the turn-based battles at an advantage. When it comes to turn-based combat, once you enter battle, you're going to be able to move around freely to position yourself. You'll have your arts, basic attacks, or your crafts. Now, arts are going to take your EP, which is kind of like the mana for the Trails of series, I presume, and then your crafts are going to take your CP, which are going to be different types of abilities that are associated with different types of stats to make them stronger. Arts are going to be able to target enemies' weaknesses. Now, when it comes to the craft side of things, that's going to be where you're going to be able to do damage, as well as give different buffs and debuffs on these abilities. And there's also some abilities that are going to be able to dish out more damage based on your positioning. And so some, like an attack I think with Vaughn, is if you attack from the side, you're going to be able to dish out more damage than just attacking straight up. So your positioning does matter, and you are supposed to kind of move around to get the most amount of damage, but you also want to stay close to your teammates because you get, I don't remember, I think it's like an SCM, but I just called it a link attack, where if you're within proximity with your teammate and you perform an attack, your other teammate who you're in proximity with is going to hop in and do an attack after you to help you dish out a little bit more damage. Each stat has a little like sign that's going to tell you how strong it is. So there's like D's, there's a lot of D's because I'm weak right now, but as you progress, you're going to be able to unlock stronger abilities, and the amount of damage that they do will adjust based on these letter gradings right here. But you can see that there is an S rank attack that you start out with, and this is achieved from your S boost, which you can see at the bottom left of the screen. When you S boost your character, it's going to make them stronger, and you can S boost them one time, and then you can S boost them an additional second time, and each tier is going to give you stronger buffs for your attacks. But once you hit it to that second notch, that's when you're going to be able to unlock your secret ability, which is known as the S break. You can perform your S break on your turn, or you can use it to interrupt an enemy's turn to get a second attack in. But you'll hit R2, which will pop up this menu, and then you'll just hit whichever character you want to use the S break to, and they're going to jump in and do their massive S break ability, which is going to be your S rank tier damage. So now let's move into equipment and gearing out your characters. Pretty straightforward. You figure out what you want to prioritize. There is a costume slot, but I don't have any, so maybe that'll be something that I'll get later, or some type of DLC. But where the real customization comes in is going to be this orbments menu right here. Each character has a hollow core, and the hollow core can be leveled up and changed, and this hollow core kind of determines and affects the base stats that you have with that character. So we can see that this one gives art damage plus 20 and max EP plus 75, but the one that I have equipped has different stats. So these are things that can be leveled up as well as equipped to different characters if you want to provide them a certain amount of customization with the hollow core, which I thought was really cool. And each of them have like a specific type. So I think this one is pure blessing, which is healing, high mobility, kind escort, and whirlwind. So there's different things that each hollow core specializes in, but you can equip these to all the different characters except for Vaughn to change them. And that's just one form of customization. Now the next one is going to come when it gets to the court system. And so these courts are going to be able to provide you stat increases as well as shard skills. And the way these shard skills work is that if you cross the threshold that we can see right here with 2 out of 2, I'm going to unlock the Chaos Impact shard skill, which has a chance of adding Mirage type damage to my attacks when I attack, which here is 25%. You'll be able to unlock more slots here to equip things, and you can see that the shard skills have a significant variation. These ones at the top are just adding extra elemental damage to your attacks with a 25% chance. But we can see down here when we get to the shield breaker that when you're attacking, you're gonna have a chance to decrease your enemy's defense. So I can see this getting real crazy with the types of builds that you want with your different characters. And we can see the variety of the different shard skills that are available. The next customizable thing is going to be the arch drivers. And this is a very unique take that I haven't seen before, where the arch driver, which is equivalent to like being your spells or your magic damage in other JRPGs, the arch driver is going to control all of the active spells that you have. So right now I have a water called Aqua art driver equipped. So all of my active magic or art abilities are going to be water based. And then, there's some variations with other skills, but primarily they're going to be water based. And if I were to change this, I can add this one, the amber art driver, which would give me earth based abilities, which I thought was very unique. Now, where we get into the variation, you're going to have 2 custom slots per art driver where you can buy different plugins, which are going to allow you to add and customize that driver. So that way you can hit the different weakness of the elements. And then the last slot over here is just going to be your shard skill list. And so we can see all of the active shard skills that I have on my Yes available based on how I slotted those quartzes in. The last menu that we have when it comes to customization is going to be your tactics. And this is going to be within the open field. So you can set your teammates to focus on the enemy you're attacking, disperse to attack other enemies, or just don't attack and defend. And then you also can adjust their positioning of where you want them to stand when it comes to the open field combat. Another quick thing to hit, and you guys probably expect this to be here, but there is a connections tab where you can do things in your free time. And during your free time, if you clear your different quests, you're going to get more free points that you can spend on connection and bonding events with your teammates or other people that you meet along your journey. And when you do that, you're going to get additional effects that are going to activate during your link attacks that happen in the command battles. The last thing, which I believe is new to the franchise when it comes to the gameplay side of things, is Trails Through Daybreak implements an alignment system based on law, chaos, or I believe the other one is gray. And based on your decisions through the game or the ways that you handle different side quests, you'll be able to choose which side you align with more and grow that particular attribute of yourself out further. Now let's get into my pros and cons that I had listed as I played through the game, but we'll start with the pros before we get into the negative side of things. My first pro was going to be that the story, even down to the side quest so far, has been perfection. I mentioned that there was pacing issues that I heard about Cold Steel 1, which is why I didn't play it, and Trails Through Daybreak just shatters that. I've been invested since chapter 1. The next is going to be the new combat mixture that makes grinding feel much easier. And when I want to speed through certain things, I can just go with the action-based combat. And then when I actually need to sit down, think, and strategize, I can go with the turn-based combat. I think this is kind of the evolution of JRPGs and turn-based combat in the future, but it just feels like it sets the pacing right when it comes to dungeons, as well as getting my characters leveled up efficiently. The next pro that I have to give is going to be mainly towards Falcom, and I feel like that key at the beginning that I mentioned is just perfect when it comes to catching first-time Trails players up to speed with the dialogue, the terminology that's being used, the different organizations, so that way you don't just feel lost. I think they did a really good job with that, and me utilizing it made me feel at home. I didn't feel like I was just thrown and knew nothing about the game. The final pro that I have is that the music, oh my God, the music is just so relaxing that I enjoy reading the dialogue that is not voice acted. I feel like this should be a given, but like some games, they'll just have super loud music and it just makes it to where it's hard for me to read when this music is just so like obnoxious. And I feel like Trails Through Daybreak I might beat the game alone just so that way I can continue listening to this OST. Oh my God. I think Trails Through Daybreak might have just recruited me to the Trails of cult. I think I officially might be one of you guys now. But that concludes the pros. Let's get into a few of the cons. And a lot of these are just kind of minor nitpicky gripes that I'll eventually get over. But the first, I feel like all of us know this, but I had to list it. The game's graphics just aren't really close to being up to date with today's standard. But like I said, when you fall in love with the Trails of franchise or the Legend of Heroes, you just accept that that's something that's probably not going to change, and you expect them to make up for it when it comes to the story. The second gripe is that in high speed mode during combat, there's just constant voice lines being repeated to where it just gets annoying hearing the same thing repeated over and over and over while I think of what move I'm gonna make next. And now this is something that can just be easily remedied by taking it off a high speed combat, but sometimes I like to run in it just to get in and out of battles quicker. The last con that I have is that some conversations only had one particular character being voice acted, so one person would be responding and voiced, but the other two characters you'd have to read their dialogue. And now this is something that's a little bit nitpicky, and I feel like Trails of fans are just happy based on the fact that these games are being ported alone, and so voice acting any type of it is just a plus. I think the voice acting that was done was amazing. I enjoyed it with the English dub, but there would be conversations where it would be mainly just text dialogue where you'd be reading it, and then like 75% of the way through, you would just hear like this ominous voice coming out of nowhere, and you're just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's talking? Why is this voice acted and the rest of their lines earlier weren't? This wraps up my review for Trails Through Daybreak, but if you're looking for a video that goes over several different JRPG franchises, check out this video right here where I attempt to explain all of the major JRPG franchises in 15 minutes. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.